Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Smokin Bulls, the podcast about business, money, and lifestyle. I'm Tyler.
I'm Dave.
And today we're joined again by a returning guest, Dr. Jim Thorne. He's been with us a number of times on the Smokin Bulls podcast. We usually see him here about twice a year. So, Jim, welcome back, and thank you again for sharing your time with us. You're the Chief Market Strategist for Wellington Altus, and we're looking forward to hearing your viewpoints here at the start of another new year. And there's a lot of stuff going on out there. We've got a changing of the guard down in the U.S. We've got a guy who's getting out of here in Canada, and it's affecting things. So be interested to hear your comments and all that stuff and many other things. So welcome back.
Thanks for having me, and Happy New Year. I guess, to start off, I think people should recognize the fact that we're in a, I think there's a gentleman named Stanley Druckenmiller who came out and said it best. The pivot that we're going through is possibly the largest pivot that we've seen in 50 years. It's that big. And you can label it death of liberalism, death of Keynesianism, whatever, big government, you know what I mean? But we are pivoting back to small government, focus on the private sector, animal spirits, the invisible hand. The private sector picks the winners and losers, not the government. And so that's what's happening right now in the United States, and that should be the tip of the spear. Obviously, we're lagging behind up here with the shenanigans that are going on in Ottawa with, Trudeau resigning, but he's not leaving, and so on and so forth. So, and so what I would say to you guys first off is let's learn from Trump 1.0 and let's take Mr. Trump seriously, but don't take him literally, okay? Because he's a showman, he talks off the cuff, but you should take him seriously. And, I think one of the things that he's done that investors should recognize is that the incoming Treasury Secretary is a superstar, Scott Bessent. He worked for George Soros when they attacked the peg of the English pound to gold. He teaches economic history at Yale. So you've got somebody that's got historical perspective, and you've also got somebody is very market savvy, as opposed to Janet Yellen, who basically, never left academia. And what he says, a couple of things, because that's what I want to pivot on. First off, these guys, he's going to anchor off of Shinzo Abe, who was the prime minister of Japan that got assassinated, and he had a while back this thing called the three arrows. Well, Bessent has the threes. He's got 3% real growth. He's got 3 million more barrels a day in oil, and he wants the deficit to be 3% by the time Trump's administration is over in 4 years. He is on record saying the only way out of this is to grow our way out of this. That's productivity growth. He is honest, and this is all coming from his testimony, and it's great if you guys want to figure out what the playbook is. It's just listen to him because he's very transparent. He says we're not in a green war with China. We are in an energy war with China, and China is building, I think he said, 100 coal-fired plants this year and 10 nuclear reactors. And it's very clear to him that if we're going to be a leader in AI and blockchain, then we need to have the cheapest energy, which is something that is sorely lacking up here in Canada. I know I'm talking to you guys in Alberta, but maybe the Eastern politicians can get their head around the fact that the building blocks to an efficient, productive economy is cheap natural resources, right? And so he says that. He likes crypto, right? He also understands that the economic growth that we've experienced over the last year or two has been is a mirage or is not real. It's all generated by government spending, which we have been talking about for a while. So you've got a guy coming in who's got a lot of experience, calls a spade, and isn't, he comes out and says, look, that December job number was all seasonal adjustment. It's BS. Look, if you look at the non-seasonal adjustment numbers, the private sector lost 350,000 jobs in December. What are you guys talking about? What are you looking at? You know what I mean? And which is what we've been talking about. So you've got an adult in the room. And what I would say to you is, because he teaches economic history, he understands the cycles, right? He understands that Trump wants to go back to the 1800s. He understands that Trump is anchoring off of a guy named Alexander Hamilton, who used tariffs as a means of generating revenue, because they didn't have income tax. Income tax didn't come in until First World War. And it also protected industries, right? But he's also pragmatic enough to sit there and go, why don't we slowly implement them so that they're not inflationary, right? So, my thesis has been, and this is where I think you guys are very lucky to have your premier, right? I mean, this is all about getting down there and figuring out how we can participate with our largest trading partner, with the largest economy in the world, which is going through the biggest structural adjustment in 50 years. And what I would say is, if you go back to the 60s, remember we had the younger folks might remember a guy named Paul Martin as a prime minister for a cup of coffee. But his dad, Paul Martin Sr., went down to Texas in the 60s and negotiated the auto pact with Lyndon Johnson. Really, really smart and well thought, good research institutions like the Council of Foreign Relations has been talking about the fact that Canada and the United States need to become more integrated, right? Guys, we're the only people in the world that use the term globalization. Nobody else does. It's all about regionalization. And yet our economies have become less integrated over the past couple of decades, not more integrated. So I would expect a period of structural adjustment for Canada. I would expect a move back to the center. We should expect the move back to the center to be labeled radical, right? Some people, when you hear, they call it a vibe shift. Academics call it this thing called the Overton windows moving to the center. But if you understand that we're moving back to the center and our economic policies are going to be driven by Milton Friedman, who was a libertarian, not John Maynard Keynes, who is a progressive left-wing guy, you get the battleground, right? You get the new lay of the land. And then what you do is, once you understand that, is you have to then you know where to go hunting for your stocks and your risk assets, right? And so, I'm very constructive on what's going to happen. I think for the Westerners, for you guys in Alberta, I think you've got to be cognizant of the fact that next couple of years you might see oil down to $50, right? Everything's going to be fine. Like it's going to be great for that they need our oil, right? But there might be a period of time where they want to get the gas at the pump down to $2 to give a jolt to the U.S. consumer, right? Up here we're in a bit of a trouble because we're going through what economists call a balance sheet recession, which is Tip Macklin is cutting rates. He's going to continue to cut rates, but real estate hasn't kicked in, right? And what happens is people are starting to deleverage. So interest rates are going down and no one's doing anything, right? So the power that everybody thought when the Bank of Canada was going to cut rates and the economy was going to go like that, no. So what happened to Japan and what's going on with China? So that's where I come out and advocate for getting the heck out of Canada, right? I think the Americans are going to continue to cut rates. And I really think that what we really have to do is realize that this year's going to be good. I think I got an S&P 500 target of about 7,000. But the real question, and every year, guys, like this is just my framework, you're going to get an 8% correction every year. And it'll be for some reason, right? Oilers get out of the playoffs early, Leafs go deep in the playoffs, but it's normal, natural, and healthy. An 8% correction. Well, typically in midterm election cycle years, which is 2026, the drawdowns are bigger, 16 to 20%. And that's typically because what happens is, what did Sleepy Joe do last year? Why? He spent money like a drunken sailor to try to get reelected. And so throughout this year, the effect of the drugs and the excessive stimulus is going to start to wear off. You've got Elon Musk going in with Doge. And look, it's going to be really simple with that, right? All they got to do is merge two departments together, okay? Then there's redundancy. And then they can fire half the people. These guys are really organized. So the question is yes, the Fed's too late. Yes, the Fed needs to be cutting now. A cut this month will not be felt until late 26 or early 27. And you know how I work, guys. Check your biases at the door, and I'm 6 quarters out. So the question to me is have they done so much damage that we don't get a normal 8% correction in 26? We get a bigger correction. And it remains to be seen. But my base case is that we get a soft landing. But, we're playing a game, right? It's like everybody's going on the ice, and on the paper, it should be okay. But you never say never, right? And we'll, stay tuned. We'll get more into that, later on in 25. But I like U.S. over Canada. I think when you hear the Secretary of the Treasury saying productivity growth is the way we get out, I mean, it tells you what stocks you want. They're going to cut rates. The big question for you guys is going to be, when do you want to get interest rate sensitive? More like, when do you want to add to your Home Depot or buy a U.S. home builder, right? Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? When do you want to buy? The set basically said. I mean, here's another thing he said. He said there's too much market share in banking in the United States and too much concentration in the top 5 banks. And he wants to repeal Dodd-Frank so that regional banks that have been crushed under Dodd-Frank can lend to Main Street. Well, I don't know, I'm from Scarborough, right? I'm from the wrong side of the track. That says you got to own a regional bank, right? They're going to deregulate to get the regional bank to get money down into Main Street. So you can see all the levers in the United States happening. And what's happening up here, right?
Nothing.
Dougie Ford Nation is saying they're gonna basically add a tax to Budweiser in the beer stores in Ontario. I mean, that's our policy. I mean, can we give our heads a shake? Hey, Doug, 7.5% unemployment, right? You know what I mean? So we've got to give our heads a shake up here. And that's why I say, my call is for Mr. Poilievre to get in. But once he gets in, there's a lot of wood to chop in terms of getting Canada back on the straight and narrow.
A lot of resistance.
There's a lot to talk about. I'll leave it there.
I think, we'll just pivot right on that point there too. I made a comment here. You're talking about how fast the United States wants to implement some of these, how organized they are, some of the strategies. I just think of the traditional 10-year lag in Canada before we get our stuff rolling like they do. And I just think we can't even afford a lag of anything. But you talk about the amount of wood that a new leader is going to have to chop, or a new prime minister. I just don't see 4 years enough time to get it done. And there's going to be a huge resistance. People are, like you said, they're addicted to the drug of, how is this going to come to me and how is this going to make me whole? Like, it's like GoFundMe up here in Canada. Every time there's a problem, someone throws up I need money. And everybody has always needed money, but it just seems to be feverish that we're always trying to plug a hole somewhere and we have no plan on how to, sail the ship. It's kind of crazy.
It's going to be a stark reality for some folks, right?
Yeah.
I mean, let's go. Like I was out in Newfoundland, right? They've got the massive offshore net gas field that needs to be developed.
Yeah.
Right. We've got power. We've got shale. You got shale deposits in northern Quebec. We are blessed with natural resources, and yet we don't want to develop them. We're crazy, right?
Yeah.
We got to get pipelines. Yeah. We got to diversify our products. We just got to start applying basic business common sense.
Mm-hmm. How hard?
You know what I mean? So when you listen to Danielle, right? Or I think some of you guys call. I know I heard somebody was talking to somebody and they call her Danny, right? but it's she's over the target. She knows what's going on. Polyev knows what's going on. But I think the big risk is does he have the team to pull this off? Mm-hmm. Like I said before we were talking, is he going to pull a Joe Clark?
Yeah.
And if guys old enough for me remember how everybody hated Trudeau Senior, and Joe got in, right? Up the middle, he beat Claude Wagner and Brian Mulroney in a fantastic leadership convention. And, he stubbed his toe a couple of times.
What did he get, 9 months?
Right?
Wasn't it something like that?
Yeah, and then Mr. Mulroney came in. But the thing was, there's a lot of things that we've got to do, and I'm sorry, I just don't see, it's kind of weird, right? Because the two leaders, the people that are the two horses that are at the lead of the Liberal Party right now are two of Alberta's finest, right?
Mm-hmm.
They born and bred in Alberta, but yet they are far left in the political spectrum. I just can't see the world is abandoning net zero.
Yeah.
Right? The Americans, going back to Scott Bissett, are sitting there saying, this is costing us economic efficiencies, and we're competing against China and India, that they're building coal-fired plants, so we got forget about it.
Yeah.
We got it, and they're punting it.
Yeah.
Right? And, why don't we have a thoughtful process where we sit there and go, if we develop that offshore field of natural gas in Newfoundland, we could ship that to India and they could use that instead of coal to help. No? Well, what do? We shut everything down.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So we've been advocating to get out of the United States. I think in the long run, we're going to be okay up here. But we've been in denial for too long up here.
I agree. I guess staying on the Canada front, obviously, for us in the way we manage money, your input has helped us quite a bit. And we've, for 5 years, we just pretty much have had a marginal position in Canada. And we use managed money. So when you have that manager that has a bit of scope to do both, you end up with a little bit of Canada sometimes. And it's paid off well. And we're not going to make any changes, but you think of the comments you made, one of them going that ties into all this is how we can't even drop provincial trade barriers. Like we can't even get past that. And there's some GDP to be had right there. Like we're so protectionist within, but yet we're yelling about protectionism that's going to come from the States.
Right. And think about it. The crew comes out from Ottawa, they get in front of the microphone and say, we're going to get rid of the trade barriers. Right, you got Friedland now saying she's against the capital gains tax, which the CRA is applying. It hasn't been passed. You got Carney and her basically saying out with the carbon tax. It's kabuki theater when you think about it. It's just bizarre.
Yeah.
But there's this old term, and it was turned on its head by Obama, and it's in politics. It's called the exclusion of the center. And what that meant was when you're politicking, when we're out on the road in the old days, our campaign is extreme. We offer, extreme policies. And then we get into office and we govern from the center. Right?
Yeah.
Well, what Obama did was the exact opposite. He politicked from the center and then got in and governed from the extremes, which is exactly what Trudeau did.
Trudeau did too, yeah. Yeah.
And if we as a country buy this again, it's not that I don't think, Ms. Friedland and Mark Carney are not capable and intelligent human beings. I personally don't trust the Liberal Party.
Yeah.
Because of what they did, and they pivoted to the extremes. Not even her father, not even Justin's father pivoted to the extremes. Right? Yeah. And so, that's where we are. I think where we're going is we're going back to the center, right? Economic policy driven by Milton Friedman, University of Chicago. It's going to be labeled as extreme, but it's projection from the extreme left, who's had power for so long, who didn't think deficits mattered.
Well, and who's backing Carney right now in the Liberal Party? Who's in the driver's seat there? The same people that put Trudeau in,
Yeah, never say never, right?
Yeah.
I mean, but to me, and this is Bissett said this, right? You do not want to make the mistakes. Or Canada and Europe is being held out as not what to do. So I'm continually trying to get people to turn off the CBC, which is the propaganda arm of the Liberal Party, and try to get back to the old days where we objectively looked at what was going on.
Yeah.
Somehow when I went to the United States and came back, we as a country have lost our ability to objectively look at ourselves for what we are.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the weird thing coming back here.
Yeah.
Actually.
Yeah. And I mean, all of us have those friends who went to the States, and some are still there and some are back, and their take on the world is obviously different just from being in a different place. But the dysfunction, it feels like up here, I mean, we can't even get along as provinces or sides of the country. And here we are trying to, battle against potential tariffs. And I think same thing. We just seem to run around with the word fire. Like it's some of these things won't happen. It's like you said, it's a tactic to get some compliance in other areas. But here we are not working on trying to find a way to be compliant and work together. We're working on ways to fight back when they drop this on us. It's interesting.
Trudeau resigned, shut down the government.
Yeah.
There's a leadership race, and now he's back acting like he hasn't resigned. Sorry guys, didn't Justin Trudeau resign? No,
yeah.
Am I missing something?
Yeah.
Did he unresign?
Yeah.
Like, I don't know, like, is this like me getting half pregnant?
Yeah.
Right? But what happens is this happens, and you sit there and you objectively look what's happening. And nobody sees the naked the elephant in the room, or the emperor has no clothes. That is, to me, the bizarre aspect of this whole thing is, you can say, they can do things right in front of you. And we have lost our ability to do critical thinking on our own and call a spade, which is, now guys, this is the thing, right? I shouldn't complain because that means I got a job.
Hmm. Well, it also means that when things are as kind of out of whack, it's a little easier to determine your positioning or where you want to be. If everybody was firing on all cylinders and you're trying to park $1 and make $1, now you have to pick between entities that are doing well and competing, and so you look at it here, it's pretty stark. I wouldn't have too much money in Canada. I would have my money in the States. That's an easy comment to make if you're looking at things objectively. Lots of people will disagree with that because there's a hometown bias, but there's nothing that's really steering this to think any other way when you look at it from the economics and you look at it from even the politics.
It's the biggest asset allocation decision you have to make. And if you have taken your equity assets, and the majority of them are now in the United States and not Canada, you will be fine.
And you have been fine.
You go and you look through periods of history where it's like this, you get the NASDAQ 100 is comping at about a 18 to 19% PA. You got the S&P is like 12 to 14. And the TSX is like 6 in constant dollars. And then you go and you talk Bitcoin, and Bitcoin is like 60, right? And my job is to sit there and say to you, since Nixon closed the gold window in the early 1970s, okay, money supply has grown at about 8% to 9% a year. Let's say it's 8% a year. That means for you to make sure that your client's standard of living stays the same, that $1 million they gave you, next year you've got to get at least an 8% return. Not 5, 8.
Yeah.
Right? And what my objective is to tell you guys where to go fishing so that it's easier for you to achieve your 8% to 10 to 12%. You know, if you can get 8% and then you add a little bit on top of that, then you're doing great. And then the only thing I would say to you guys about where we are, you know, this is just probability, right? There are periods of time, we are in a secular bull market that is going to last until late this decade, early next decade. And it's all based on demographics, and it's all based on the millennials that are the largest demographic cohort that are getting into family formation and investing for their future and their kids' university, right? So you've got investing and family formation. If you go back in time and look at when the largest cohort is doing that, you get a secular bull market. The last cohort to do that was the boomers, and when did they peak? Right? Yeah. 2000. What happened after that? Right? It went sideways for a decade. Right? I think the 30s, if you use the demographics, are like that. So if we're in probability mode, we're in a period of time right now where we got to make hay for the sunshine, because next decade is going to get really tough. Really, really tough. So that's why I say to you guys, expect like I'm 7,000 this year again, right? Another 20% year, right? And, you know, because of everything's lining up like that. You got innovation, right? It's going to be really hard for some people because we're in that area of the cycle. Historically, forget about its AI. It's the canal, right? It's the railroad. Right? We don't know how big this is going to affect our economy. We don't know what the total addressable market is. So typically in this stage of the build out, we apply too much capital to it because we don't know. And we create what? A bubble, which is natural, right? Which is what happened in 2000.
Yeah.
We're just not there yet, right? So, you know, when I say to you, look at Tesla, or look at Palantir, you look at all these high growth names, right? There's no way you can value them because you're trying to figure out how big AI is going to be out 10 years. Once you can get a handle on how big AI is going to be or what their market is going to be, then valuations compress rapidly.
And that will happen at some point for sure. Yeah. Question.
I think. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, like on the equity side, I mean, I'm talking in the sense of how we manage money, you know, position for growth, you know, at some point working the fixed income a bit. But, you know, we use a lot of alternative investments. What's your take on how they, you know, we use them as a stabilizer. Obviously, they're a little more illiquid, but from the sense of building a portfolio, it's been a great piece to keep the volatility down, but keep the return up. How do you see them intertwining in this style of an economy going forward over the next few years?
It should be a standard part of your asset allocation plan.
Yep.
Right? But the devil's in the details of what you buy, right? Like,
For
so
sure.
I've been advocating, I don't know if you guys took any down, but when SpaceX came out and they did a buy, I said, you know, buy some SpaceX. Yeah, I think privates, you know, the new asset allocation platform, it's 50, 30, 20, right? 50 stocks, 30 bonds, 20 alts, right? And it's not 60, 40, right? So, yeah, I think they're great. Ballast for the portfolio, reduces the volatility. It's all about selecting the right thing. Should be uncorrelated returns. You know what I mean?
Yep.
So yeah, I mean, they're a staple.
Yeah.
They're a staple.
Great. Just one more question on them then. What do you think about the risks from interest rate sensitivity, kind of, Canada's real estate, how it's positioned over all the years, when it comes to kind of real property type alternatives and those that are interest rate sensitive?
Well, the big question, I think interest rates are going to go, if I'm right about the balance sheet recession, interest rates are going to go way down. Okay? Interest rates are going to go way down. And so then it's on a case-by-case basis, because, what we do is we get out of like a crazy bull market in real estate, which is, everybody, anybody just goes blindly at real estate and wins. Now it's location, and the right product, right? So, we're going to need server farms up here, right? We're going to need distribution centers up here. We're going to, when we get off and recognize the fact that cheap energy is the place to go, then we're going to be a powerhouse in AI. And the Americans know that, So, but, here, like, for example, downtown Toronto, these postage stamped condos that they're still building just over here, massive development that's half done. Certain condo subsections have the worst sales in 30 years. So it's all about buying the right one. Is and in that case, for you guys, it would be hiring the right managers to basically be able to figure out where the sweet spot is in real estate. Am I negative on real estate? No, but it's going back to the old rule. It's location.
Yeah.
Right?
That was 30 years ago. It hasn't been applied.
But here's the thing: everybody's freaking out in Toronto because somebody at the top of the market put down 2.8 for a house in Brampton.
Yeah.
Brampton. I mean, for you folks, that's way out of town.
Oh, I know where it is. Yeah, I grew up in Mississauga, so straight up Highway 10 used to be farm fields, golf courses.
Yeah. But okay, so that's or over here at Lansdowne and Bloor, these small condos, they're done. That's what happened in the late 1980s, early 90s, when John Crow, then governor of the Bank of Canada, did exactly what Tim Macklin did and hammered the real estate market.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I don't think it's going to be as bad as what Mr. Crow did, but I think there are some condos in downtown Toronto that are very small that I don't think are going to sell, right? But there's other places, a nice place, nice house in a nice neighborhood, right? Priced fairly, it's going to go.
Yeah.
Right? So it's back to common sense.
Yeah. What you got there, Tyler?
I don't know. You're stealing all my thunder. I can't get a word in.
I'm jumping in as fast as Tyler's going. Usually Tyler's the one on these. How about we jump to energy a bit? Obviously being Alberta based, sense of decrease in the price in oil. I think of, we use some energy investments, and thankfully they've been a bit underweight on oil over the last year and a bit, and a little overweight on natural gas. But I think, when you talk about cheap energy, I mean, it comes off of natural gas, I think, and potentially, I just can't believe how long we're taking for nuclear. As I think you made a comment a while back on the small modular nuclear reactors. I mean, I always joke the same thing. They've been in submarines for 40 plus years, and there's every 20,000 size small city or town in Northern Ontario to communities all around could basically run off of one of these things, but yet we can't seem to get anything moving. We know how to make it.
That's regulation.
Yeah.
That's regulation. We must talk about it. You have nuclear subs that have been running since 1955 in the United States. They've never had an accident, and they're run by 19-year-olds. Okay?
Good point. Yeah. Very well trained 19-year-olds.
You can put one of those small modular nuclear reactors in a 747 and it will hover continually. Yeah. So what are we doing, guys? Like, this is, this is what's happening now. Is I think what's happened is the guys from Silicon, this is where the generational shift is. The guys from Silicon Valley, the Mark Andreessens, right? The Elon Musks, right? They went down the rabbit hole Okay? And they came up and they said, shut the front door. We got to support Trump. Right? And they realized the damage that the extreme left has done in terms of regulation. Right? And that's what Doge is going to do. So we've got the technology. Why didn't we build it? You've got the natural gas.
Yeah.
Right? Why don't we have why don't we have refiners in this country? Right? I worked for Imperial Oil for 3 summers in Toronto. Right? Here's my cynical point of view, right? It's not cynical. The Americans already own Alberta and Texas and Saudi Arabia are all on the same page. Okay? I work for Imperial Oil, which is 70% owned by Exxon. They're really smart. Exxon's a technology company now. Right? So we've got to go through a period of adjustment to basically make North America, and this goes back to the Council of Foreign Relations, an economic superpower, which means we need to develop our natural resources.
Yeah.
And Canada's got a ton of natural resources. Mr. Trump is absolutely right about California. Turn on the tap and let the water come down from the northwest into California to irrigate all the fields. Like, we're implementing policies that lack common sense. Okay, why didn't we have pipelines going both ways? Why don't we refine oil? But we will, right? And so when you look at it that way, it's a renaissance. But what I would say to you is it's just not going to be in this phase as easy as making it a call on where you think the price of crude is going to be. Because I think there is going to be areas that are going to be in the energy patch that are going to make a heck of a lot more money than the E&P names over the next couple of years. Even though I think the E&P names are the best managed they've ever been. Their cash flow is solid. They're paying down debt. They're paying a good dividend. They're fine if you own them. But are you expecting them to have a significant return in terms of capital appreciation over the next 2 years? I don't think so. Right? And if that's what you have them in the portfolio for, I think you're wrong. If you have them in your portfolio for dividends, right? Then God bless you. This is all about, you're building a hockey team, right? And what do you want? But I think pipelines are very interesting, right? I mean, if you expand the tar sand, I call them the tar sands. Like how old I am. Okay?
That's bad. That's bad marketing.
We're mute.
Who wins? But if they expanded, who wins? Who are the engineering and construction companies?
Yeah.
Right? Who are the they're going to expand. We're going to have, as Premier Smith says, Fortress North America. They come up with that label. It started with the Council of Foreign Relations. We're going to become more economically integrated. And Trump is telling you they want to become an energy superpower.
Yeah.
And she's down there advocating for us. Thank God she's doing it. I wish Dougie Buckabeer Ford would be down there, hopping off of the people in Mar-a-Lago, right? He's not.
He's selling a lot of hats, though.
Well, she's catching a lot of flack here. Well, especially in Edmonton. It's a bit left-leaning in Edmonton, but she's catching a lot of flack for circumventing, protocol of being down there as a premier, not representing Team Canada.
She's stepping outside of her ranks.
I think she's doing a pretty good job for representing Team Canada.
God bless her.
Yeah.
God bless her.
Yeah.
God bless. But this goes back to the extreme left. Oh yeah, well you're Edmonton, right? Wait a minute. Is it the University of Alberta in Edmonton? Are you guys? You guys aren't true Calgary. You guys aren't true Albertans. You're that little bastion of left wing.
That's right. It's very orange circle. Orange circle. Yeah. We'll shift gears a bit here. Bitcoin. We've had it in our portfolios for 3 years and a bit, And you know what? When you're having client meetings, the clients don't tend to talk too much about what's inside the portfolios unless we bring it up. And so sometimes we do like to bring it up to let them know they have a different asset class that they're not used to, and that they've done well with it. But what is interesting is describing it for people. I mean, we've read enough on it. We've had lots of time in it now, but always trying to describe this unit of trust and why it becomes a unit of trust when it's not a coin. It's all these things that people think it is, and trying to equate it as kind of digital gold. When enough people believe something holds a value as a unit of trust, this is why it becomes valuable. And that is lost on people. As soon as you go there, they're like, yeah, but I can't see it. I can't, it's incredible. So what would you say kind of overall, just on that kind of maybe Bitcoin, stablecoin talk as to why it belongs in a portfolio and why it is a unit of trust?
Well, going back to your previous question, a couple of questions ago, to me, it would fit into your alternative asset bucket or private bucket.
Correct. Yeah.
Right? And to me, the overstretched theme is money supply is growing at 8% a year. They're debasing fiat currency. You've got fiscal irresponsibility all over the place. You better own a good chunk of gold or a good chunk of Bitcoin. And to me, it's either or, right? And you pick it. You pick one. Why I find interesting about what you're talking about is I don't walk around with cash anymore. I got a debit card. Did anybody talk to me about, well, what's the unit account and I can't touch it and feel it? No, I got my debit card and I touch a machine and I get my whatever. I get my Tims. Mm-hmm. Right? So to me, it's what they're doing is they've been indoctrinated into, I would say, the narrative that is absolutely wrong, and it's got them off. Right? It is the reason why I like Bitcoin. It's very simple to me how I frame it, and I go back to technology. This thing that you guys and I are talking on right now, this internet, was developed in the 1950s, and it was never designed to be the backbone of the global economy. Fine. Al Gore did, and Bill Clinton did embrace innovation in the internet in the 90s. And actually, guys, that's what brought the Democratic Party back from the wilderness, right? They went anti-business. And so they applied the internet. But everybody knew that the internet that we have right now has weaknesses that need to be fixed. The protocol that's going to fix that weakness is blockchain, which is a decentralized internet protocol. Okay, that cannot be hacked. The first use case in 2009 was Bitcoin, which solved the problem of digital money, which Milton Friedman talked about in the 90s as saying this is why this internet over here isn't going to work, because we need to have a unit of account that we can transfer value on the internet, right? You can't transfer value on the internet, the old internet, because of what they call this thing called the double spend problem, right? If I send you a PowerPoint presentation, I keep a copy, right? So the first iteration is Bitcoin. And the unique aspect of it is that there's only 21 million coins. It's perfect scarcity, right? There's where the digital gold comes from. Why is it important? It's because there have been 3 major gold finds this year. Now, it's going to take 5 years to go do the feasibility study and what have you. There's no more Bitcoin. And you can go around the world and you can carry it on your phone. Right? So when people say I can't touch it, feel it, taste it, well, so do you use a debit card? Right? I don't know. I don't see many people walking around with wads of, at the old days, we called $100 bills browns, right? Up here in Canada, right? I don't know of any people walking around. I don't. I mean, I got to go get my haircut and I got to go to the cash machine because my barber takes cash, right? It's the only time I use it. So I think what they're trying to do, and what the mistake is they're trying to figure it out. Right? Do you guys really understand the internet? But does my wife really understand the internet, even though she orders every day another box from Amazon Prime shows up at my front door? Right? Which is no different than the Eaton's catalog when I was a kid.
Yeah.
Right? So, there's a statement of, everybody buys Bitcoin at the price that they deserve. But here's what's happening right now. And this is why it's so important. If you can't get your head around the fact that it is here to stay, then let's add Trump to the equation. Because what this does is it solves the problem of the debt problem for the Americans, and it also ensures that the U.S. dollar will be the medium of exchange for the next 100 years. So Loomis just got an appointment to run the Senate Committee on Crypto, and in it, in her statement, she says this is going to ensure that the U.S. dollar is going to have a leadership position in the global economy for centuries to come. I equate this going back to the 70s with the petrodollar deal, where the Americans made a deal and, comes out after the fact. Kissinger makes a deal with the Saudis to trade oil only in U.S. dollars and recycle that money back into U.S. treasuries, which ensured the backing of what?
Currency.
The U.S. dollar that just went off the gold standard.
Mm-hmm.
Right? We're right there. So, to me, you've got to get away from the misinformation that you hear on mainstream media. You've got to understand that our world is digital, and you already trade digital money or value when you basically use your debit card. The only difference is that the new digital representation using Bitcoin cannot be expanded at will by the Ottawa government or the Bank of Canada. And that is why people are flocking to it, because it stores value.
Yeah.
That's it.
Mm-hmm.
And then quantum computing comes in and blows it up. I don't. Well, all they have to do is they have to adjust the protocol. And I think what will be very interesting to see what happens if quantum computing takes off. The least of our problems is going to be hacking into Bitcoin. It'll be hacking into the nuclear codes. Yeah.
To launch missiles, okay? Or to hack into the grid, or to, what have you. So it's, they come up with all this stuff. It's just, to me, it's such noise. Maybe quantum computing happens. Maybe it does. But it's been talked about forever. Hey, if you want it, there's a play called Trade Computers with the Black Widow. Ooh, right? That's been around my whole career. Right? So to me, so what I try to say to everybody is, I am not into these alternative coins. I think Bitcoin is digital gold. I think it's going to be accepted. I think you've now got the folks in Washington realizing that if you have Bitcoin, that the U.S. dollar is backed by Bitcoin and U.S. treasuries are there as well, you basically ensure the leadership position of the Americans for time to come. And I don't understand why nobody else took that position when you think about it. So I'm very bullish on it. And, but again, it's, as I get older in life, I spent too much time trying to get people to recognize that the internet was something, that the iPhone was going to be something, right? So I say it a couple of times, and then I go off. I do Pontius Pilate. I wash my hands of it. You can't figure it out. Unfortunately, that's your problem, not mine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice.
Well, it's exciting stuff, Jim. I mean, I like your prediction of another 20% year in the S&P, and it's interesting to learn where you think that growth is coming from. So we're happy to sit around and enjoy another bull market. And like you said in a number of your newsletters, it's a keep it simple process right now. It's not hard to figure out who the winners are. And if it is hard for you, then you're thinking too hard. You're looking too deeply into it. So we should probably wrap up because we're at our hour and we want to let you get back to your day. So thank you very much for your time again here on Smokin Bulls. We look forward to having you back again in the fall, Jim, and we appreciate your time.
Thanks, Jim.
Take care, guys. Be safe. Have a good winter, okay?
You bet. Bye for now.